Hey, it's Brian Burns. Welcome to this episode of the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Today, you got a kind of a different interview. It's somebody who had spent his whole career in B2B sales, but then had a life-changing event. He was on the plane that landed in the Hudson. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at that, but that's out of nervousness, not out of humor. I can't imagine doing that. I fly all the time, and so does David. David's joining us, David Sanderson. He was one of the passengers on that flight, and it changed his life. So we're going to kind of go through that journey of, how do you go from, corporate sales, B2B sales guy, into, really changing your life, writing about leadership, what people are doing right and wrong today, how that you can, put balance and perspective back into your life. So it's a great story. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun interview, and we really kind of connected at kind of that life phase level. So before we get into it, I just want to make sure that you're checking out b2brevenue.com. You can download my free ebook on how companies make product selection, so you kind of understand how your marketing and sales should go. Also, make sure you're checking out Discover.org. They've got a great ebook on how your sales team can go from B players to A players. It was done with Gong.io, so the research is really well thought out. And if you'd like to try out Pipedrive and or Nudge.ai, both have great capabilities of finding out information about your accounts. The coupon code is Brutal Truth, and you get 1 month free of the professional version. Pipedrive is a great CRM that I use, and Nudge is what I use to find the relationships and the context to do cold outreach and connect with people. Because the best way to get into a company is not through the front door. It's to have them escort you in, just ask you in, invite you in. So make sure you're checking that out. And after the interview, I'll sum everything up and give you an update on the courses. Okay. Hey, Dave, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, a little bit of history about me is that, I started out after I graduated from college. I was actually in restaurant management because my dad told me I had to get a job. And all I really wanted to do at that point in my career was go to Virginia Beach and pour some beer and have a good time. But he told me I had to get a job. So he helped me get my first job, which was a great thing because I learned a lot of things. You learn to humble yourself a lot when you go into restaurant management because you think you know a lot, and all of a sudden you realize you know nothing. But I had some great experiences, and I had one tremendous experience on leadership that really sort of gave me the format of sort of my thought process going forward, and not only during that career, but my sales career and sales management career, and that set me on a whole different pathway. And then I got involved in sales and grew through that for about 30 plus years until I made the decision to start my own little company after an experience called the Miracle on the Hudson.
Now that must have been some day, huh?
It was a life-changing day. I mean, I was at the end of a 3-day business trip for my company at that point. I was working for a company by the name of Oracle, and I was responsible for the consumer packaged goods in the Southeast area. So I had basically clients in the Southeast area, but they have, of course, plants all over the country. So we were up in New York and end of a 3-day business trip. So I got done early, and then the corporate travel agent changed flights for me at 10 o'clock that morning because I wanted to get home early on a Thursday, and she put me on flight 1549, which changed the entire direction of my life.
And when did you notice that something went wrong? You obviously fly a lot, so you're probably pretty sensitive to anything out of the norm.
Yeah, I can't, like most people who travel a lot, I took everything for granted.
Yeah.
I had so many miles, Brian. I was flying primarily first class because I had a lot of upgrades. But since I changed my flight, I had to go back and coach, which I was in seat 15A, and so I was 4 rows behind the left wing. So so I didn't pay attention. I was one of the first people to board because of my status with U.S. Airways. But once I heard the explosion, that sort of woke me up and sort of got my attention, and that's when I looked out the window. I saw fire coming out from beneath the left wing. So I knew something had happened, but like we just talked about, I flew so often, no big deal. The plane lost an engine. All he's going to do is go back to LaGuardia and get another plane. But no one. I think that was the moment that no one knew that it happened on both sides of the plane because I think if anybody would have realized that happened, it would probably been a lot more people getting excited and or losing it, and no one lost it on the plane, which I think was part of the saving grace.
And what goes through your mind at that time? I mean, we've all kind of gone through turbulence and, seen obviously other people's life events and, having, brushes with, terrible situations. But I certainly haven't been into anything that close.
Yeah, I think, initially, like I said, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, when I heard it, I was like, oh, he has another engine, right? I mean, planes have multiple engines. So, and when I felt him banking, I thought he was just banking to go back to LaGuardia. But until I heard the captain say his famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact," that's when I think I knew. Well, I knew. I think that's when everybody knew. This is pretty serious. I mean, this is, we cleared the George Washington Bridge. I don't know if you've ever flown. I'm sure you've flown that area, but George Washington Bridge is roughly 600 feet up, and we cleared the bridge by about 400 plus feet. So we were roughly 1,000 plus or minus feet at that point and descending quickly. And when we crossed the bridge and I looked out the window, I looked down, and all of a sudden you could see people's faces looking up at you. It's like, whoa, this thing's going down pretty fast. And I think that was the moment I realized that this is probably not going to turn out very well for me.
And, do you panic? Do you just go clear-headed? Do you pray? What do you do?
Well,
I don't know.
Pray. And, I think everybody, whether you have a greater belief system or not, that you probably pray to something. And I definitely prayed. But I tell people, I didn't realize this till I had a conversation with a lady who survived the earthquake in Haiti. And she lived here in Charlotte at that point. And she and I got together shortly afterward because she was buried under rubble for about 5 or 6 hours. They couldn't find her. Yeah. And she survived. And we were talking about that moment. It's like when everything's going down and this is it. And she and I had a very similar mindset. And what happened was you get clarity. I saw things in my life with such clarity that happened in my life. And that's why I wrote the book Moments Matter. They call it Moments Matter because all those moments you realize in your life really did matter. And she had a very similar experience being in that rubble before she was rescued. That, you see your life in full clarity. Everything is big and bright. You understand pretty much why you were on this earth when you don't think you're coming back.
And let's take it from the point that you knew you were okay.
Yeah.
Was that when you were out of the plane, when you got onto dry land?
I think there were multiple points, Brian, because once we got down, we survived the crash. That was one moment, but all of a sudden you have water coming in.
Yeah. Which
is coming in extremely rapidly because of the way the plane crashed and or water landed into the river. So, number one, you got down, you survived the crash, hooray, then you got to get out of the plane. So there's another thing you have to go through, which is a great lesson on teamwork and leadership, which I really speak a lot about. I love talking about that. In fact, that's what my new blog is about, that subject. But I think the moment I realized that I really did make it wasn't until I got to the triage center, because there was things happening so quickly. First, I couldn't feel anything once I got onto the ferries because, I was so cold. I was in the water for 7 minutes, 36-degree water. So but you have adrenaline going, and so adrenaline carries you a long way until you have no adrenaline left. And so that was point number 3. But point number 4 is when I was in the triage center, and I thought everything was cool until a guy put a tag on my ankle. And I thought the only thing I could relate to that was a TV show that I saw when I was growing up in the 70s called MASH, when they tagged your toe. And I thought, they tagged me. I'm done. I really didn't make it. It's like that. I tell people, it's like you feel like it's that movie Ghost, where you're watching yourself die and you're talking, but no one's answering. Yeah. And it's a very weird feeling to have. Unfortunately for me, it was just the way they had to identify me, right? But that's the moment I realized once the paramedic or EMT person, her name was Heather, which she was one of my heroes, took my blood pressure and said, we got to go now. You can have a heart attack or stroke. And at least I knew I was alive. Yeah. So I think that was the moment I realized.
And did you sustain any substantial injury, or were you okay? Or
well, I had hypothermia. That's why my body temperature down to 94. That's why I was in the hospital for overnight. I had some things. In fact, I still got some bruises and things that haven't healed on my ankles based on getting out of the plane and hitting some things. And I had to get glasses. I got some got some of the oil spill or the fuel spill that got in my eye when I swam, and I had a couple black marks in my eye that I didn't realize I had until I went to the optometrist, and he said, "Hey, what are these things?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess that's the fuel, or something. Oil got in my eye." But all I had to do was get glasses, but nothing substantial. I was just very fortunate that I survived without any major injuries.
And when you finally got home, what went through your mind, and what life-changing decisions did you make?
Well, once I got home immediately, it was just a circus. I mean, it was media every place, right? I couldn't go out of my house without having media. But once things sort of settled down a little bit, what I realized really a couple of different things. Number one, I really, Brian, I was not prioritizing my time correctly. If you're in technology sales like I was for so many years, you really work for the company, and the company sort of tells you where to go, when to go, how to go. And so I scheduled my time around company events instead of personal events and family events. And I had two daughters, both in high school at that point, and one was in middle school and one was in elementary, a son in elementary. And I was missing a lot of things because of the company.
Yeah.
And I realized, you know what, I've got to shift that mindset. So that's the biggest change that I made. I tell people personally that I started scheduling things around my family instead of my company, which my company has some challenges with. They want to be at certain places at certain times, but candidly, you just figure out how to do it. And there's a lot of great things about conference calls. You can put your headpiece in and put it on mute. That's pretty much what I was doing because I wasn't going to miss any family events. So I think that was the biggest change that I made.
Yeah. And how long did you just stay with Oracle before you decided to go on your own?
It wasn't immediate because, I knew that I had a mission. I knew that I had a calling, but you still got to put food on the table, and you still got to put kids through college. So it took me about 4.5 years. And I remember the day that I made the decision and to do it, but my wife hadn't bought in. But once my wife bought in, and that was actually on January 15th, 2014.
Okay.
She gave me the thumbs up to do it. I knew right after Thanksgiving because something happened at Thanksgiving that woke me up. But then it was another couple of months until she gave me the thumbs up to do it.
And that's it. And it's pretty scary, especially with, two kids heading off to college pretty quick.
Yep.
And I don't know what your financial situation was, but you certainly had a lot of runway, excuse the pun, as far as expenses.
Well, we were doing pretty well financially then, but as you know, if anybody who's made that move, and I do a lot of coaching now and mentoring people because they want to make the move out of corporate to doing something on their own or non-for-profit, and I sort of figured out the strategy on to do it because I had the great fortune of Brian of being the head of security for a guy by the name of Tony Robbins and being around Tony and learning and absorbing everything that he taught. So I had that benefit, and I took that benefit and understood it. So, when you go on your own, there's a lot of lessons you have to learn. And it's great that you can drive revenue, but if you don't know how to manage your revenue, then financially you get in a pretty tough situation. That's actually what happened to me. Once I started making that move, because when you work for a company like Oracle, which I love Oracle, they took great care of me, in my position. But they do all the other back end stuff. All you got to do is go out and sell.
Right. There's a lot of infrastructure behind it. There's a lot of momentum.
And you got to do that yourself. So that was a great learning experience.
What was the first year like? Was it scary?
I don't think I was scared, but I tell you what, it was rapid fire learning because all of a sudden I realized I didn't know how to collect money. I didn't know how to pay people correctly. Yeah. By the way, I have to respond to all these people. And so I hired a personal assistant, and Tammy was a tremendous asset to me because candidly, Tammy was handling all the administrative stuff because it was coming at me hard and fast. And then Tammy wanted to get married, so Tammy left. So I think it was year number 2, Brian. It was my awakening year because Tammy the first year was handling all this stuff. Second year I had to handle it all. And that was an eye-opening experience.
And so what do you focus on mostly now? Is it writing? Is it speaking? Is it consulting?
Well, it's definitely shifted where for the first probably 3.5 plus years, it was probably 90% speaking. But then I wrote the book Moments Matter, which came out in 2016, which definitely opened up a whole different avenue because I talk about these things. I get new workshops now, and I put my new course out, and I've got my keynote. So I would say that speaking is probably about 40 to 50%, because my goal now is to get speaking somewhere about 35 to 40%, and all these other things more like 60%, where I can then spend my time adding value to people and helping them, achieve what they want to achieve, move from where they want to move to a better place. And so it has moved, but it's not where I want it just yet. We got to get the numbers, the percentages a little bit more, where I have more control over my time instead of having to spend most of my time speaking to drive revenue.
Yeah. And what or who is really your target market now, as far as the speaking or the core part of your business? Is it corporate? Is it individual?
Most definitely it's corporate. Yeah. Most definitely corporate. I do if you break down my speaking business portion, it's about probably 80% corporate. I do a lot of that, includes associations and conferences and big things like that. But I still spend, one of my core missions and core values is 10% of my speaking, or 10% of whatever I do, goes back to contribution. So 10% now, between 10 and 20 times a year, I'll do events for the American Red Cross, because I have a very big passion for the Red Cross, because they were there for me that day, 3 times actually that day, and the next day after the plane crash. So at least 10% plus of my time is contribution events, where I'll do it for the Red Cross, helping them raise money. And then I'll do like 4 or 5 promotional events a year for other organizations that have major things, like the United Way or something like that.
And so how does it feel to be out on your own now? What does your day look like? What is the key motive and emotion that you're feeling during the day that you didn't have at corporate?
Well, the great thing about now is I still get up like I do every day. I mean, when I was working in corporate world, I was always getting up at 5:25 in the morning and getting it going. I do the same thing now. I've kept the same schedule, but now I control my calendar. That's the difference. Where if I want to start having conference calls or anything, travel or anything until 9:30, I'll do it. Where before we start at 7 a.m. Doing our thing. So I think my day has shifted, because now I control my time and control where I'm going to go, when I'm going to go. And we're not totally there yet, Brian. I'll be very candid. I'm not to the point where like a Tony Robbins is, where he has people, he can make the call when he wants to do something.
Yeah.
One of these days, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be to that point. But it's just different now, where I can control my events and my calendar.
And that's it. And being a speaker, that's back on the road again too.
Yep, exactly. I still travel 100 plus times a year.
Yeah.
I speak, on average 4 to 6 times a month still.
Wow.
But it's at least those events are where I want to do events now, where I don't have to do them.
And tell us about the book. What was the kind of I think we know the driver of the book,
Yep.
But what was that process like? Why did you choose a book versus kind of the other channels that were available to you?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was involved with a book. I helped write a chapter, so I guess I get contributing author kind of thing, a Brace for Impact. So I enjoyed having that opportunity to be around a book. But what really, I'll tell you the backstory of why it happened is, and I tell this story now in my talks, is we had a couple ladies that lived down the street, elderly ladies, and my wife got a phone call one day, and they needed help getting their TV turned on.
Yeah.
And, you can do anything you can. I mean, you're neighbors, right? You're going to help them. And my wife called me. I'm here in the office where I am right now. Said, can you go down and help turn their TV on? And candidly, Brian, one of the things I'm really good at is turning TVs on. I know how to do that really well.
I'm pretty good at it too.
I know how to do it. So I walked down the street to do this, and it was maybe a 2-minute function, right? All they had to do was to reconfigure their thing, right?
Yeah.
But they asked me to stay. They said, would you stay for milk and cookies? That's how they wanted to pay me. And I tell people, who's going to pass up milk and cookies from a couple older ladies who can probably bake, right?
Yeah.
There, right? So I'm all in. So as they're getting the milk and cookies prepared, I'm sitting on the couch looking at some of the things on their coffee table, and I open up this book. And one of the books they had was pictures of concentration camps.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, I love World War II history. That's one thing I love. Anything I see about it, I'll study it. So when they came out, I said, where did you get these books? I was fascinated. They said, well, we were there. And all of a sudden they rolled up their sleeves and showed me the numbers down their arms.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa. So I said, tell me the story. let me record the story, because these folks, these ladies were probably in their late 70s, early 80s. This story's gone when they're gone. They said, we don't know, we'll tell you, but you can't record it. So when I got back, my then friend and assistant, Vicky, said, you need to record your story for your grandkids and great-grandkids, because you may not be around. So that's how the Book Moments Banner came about, was because what we realized is, I told her the story. We spent 9 hours recording every moment from that 2 days. And we realized there are all these lessons and strategies that I did that can benefit other people who go through what I call now their personal plane crash moments in life, whether it's a fire, flood, health scare, whatever it may be. And that's how the book really emanated from that, having milk and cookies turning on a TV from two older ladies.
Yeah, that is interesting. Actually, the first time I saw Anne Frank, the play in Boston, I was there with a friend who brought his aunt, and she showed me her numbers.
Yep.
And it really hits home when you know somebody that was personally impacted. My grandfather died during D-Day, but I never met him, of course.
Right.
But do you happen to stay in touch with anybody that was on that flight?
Yeah, the passenger that was in the hospital with me actually was one of the first passengers out, and I was one of the last passengers out, so it was very unique to have us together. So he actually lives about a mile from me here in Charlotte. You go across the number 14 hole and down a few roads, that's where he lives. So we stay in contact. And I know most of the people, especially the people who went out the right side of the plane where I went out. But we'll be back together. This will be the 10th anniversary in January, and I know there's a couple things planned. Hopefully I'll be able to interact with some of them then, but Barry's probably the one person I stay the closest to. Yeah.
And this has been a fascinating conversation, Dave. I really appreciate your time. Where do people go to get your book, learn about your work, and see if you're the right match to bring in for a speech?
I think the best way, thank you, Brian, number one, for having me, and let me share this, is my website is Dave Sanderson Speaks, SPEAKS.com, and we just updated with all that information, so you can check out a little bit about me, my story, how to get in contact with me. I don't have an assistant now, so it comes straight to me, so I don't have any filters right now, so I tell people, and unfortunately they can get right to me, but no, I really appreciate that. And my information about my new course, Cultivating Personal Leadership, we just got up this week, which I'm really excited about. My book. We also, have a new group we're starting next month called Impact, which we'll have more information on the website about. So, and my next book will be coming out next January. So that's where you'll get all this information. I'm honored if anybody would be interested in just connecting with me. I'll be more happy to share some of the ideas and strategies that I shared during my talk.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. David seems like a really great guy. What a life-changing event. I think we've all had that big chill moment in our life that kind of reprioritizes things, that puts everything back into perspective, that we're not here forever. And to put that into balance with what we do during the day and what we do in nights and weekends, and to make sure that that is in balance so that we can be a great part of a company and be there for our customers. I hope you enjoyed that. To give you an update on the classes, they're doing really well. All of the SDRs that went through the sales development rep course have found jobs and have been placed. So 73 of them have been placed in a record time, and they all placed themselves. I taught them how to do it without doing applications or dealing with recruiters. Go directly to the managers, connect with them, and that is a great example of their capabilities as sales development reps. The next class will come out in September. So if you have people or you have openings and you want to get on the list, just send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. All the information's in the show notes below. And make sure you're checking out our partners. They're doing a great job of supporting the podcast and sharing great content. Co-Video, I had an episode with Jason Price. He's the founder of the company, talking about how to use video in your emails as a way of warming up that outreach, personalizing it, and not having it be just that cold text. Very powerful capability. Also this week, Gong.io came out with a great blog post on when to use I and we to be the most effective. It may seem a little obscure, but I think it's powerful. I think these little skills that really make the quality of our calls and conversations with people much more powerful. And Nudge.ai is coming out with capability. I'm going to have Steve Woods, the co-founder, on the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast this week, talking about their new capability about companies. He's sharing exactly what is happening with building up relationships within the company and showing that in the CRM as a way of determining how likely is that deal to close, about the strength of the relationships with each of the key stakeholders and decision makers within that company. So I'm really on this rant or rampage about getting the quality of the sales process more in focus than just the quantity, because the numbers can be faked and are faked and are not really helpful. They're distracting. The key thing that I got away from the training is that all the reps are saying, well, I don't have time to do my real job because I'm too busy filling in the CRM so the manager gets to see the dashboard the way they want to. I think the dashboard's gotten in the way of really connecting with reps and seeing what's working and what's not working out there so that they can focus on the things that do work. Enough about that. I also was on a webinar this week with Arkadin, and I put that on my YouTube channel. So if you're into YouTube and you like videos, that's the place to go. Brian Burns Sales Podcast on YouTube. Just search my name and Sales Podcast. It comes up right there. I'm also doing some walks and talks, kind of a vlog about, sales, kind of my rants, 1 to 2 minutes about what I see working and not working, because I'm getting a lot of questions that just don't apply anymore to sales. Like, how do you get around the gatekeeper? It's like, if that's the way you're selling, there's something wrong, because that's 30 years old, and what everyone's talking about isn't tips, and it is tips and tricks instead of the real approach that we are people and we buy from people and we connect with people, and it doesn't matter how great your value proposition is unless you happen to hit them at the right time with those right magic words, which don't really seem to be working today. You're out on your own. And as marketing professionals, we've got to be out connecting with people, hitting people up with the content and the message, and helping people, connecting with them, making them part of our marketing, part of our sales strategy, instead of this tribal behavior of you're the customer, we're the sales and marketing people. Enough of that. I appreciate you listening. Connect up with me on LinkedIn. I'm posting videos there of some of the walk around videos and my content there, as well as kind of a little snippet of what I'm up to and what I'm seeing working today. So please connect up with me. And if you see something there you like, please share it, comment on it, and like it. I really appreciate that.